Welcome to OASIS Tokyo, where we explore the stories and lives of young professionals living and working in Japan. Today, we are joined by Iain. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, for all of our viewers today, Iain, would it be great if you could just give us a brief self-introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. My name is Iain Mason. I was born and raised in Oak Park, Michigan, and my father is Jamaican. I grew up in New York, and my mother is Japanese.
Awesome. So another half-food like myself.
Yes,
over here
yeah. So
today.
we're out there. We're out there.
So, Iain, I'd love to learn a bit more about yourself, sort of your background and growing up with obviously your mixed race, biracial background. I was wondering if you could just maybe tell us a bit more about what it was like to grow up biracial in Michigan in the US.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, in Michigan at the time, there weren't that much of it wasn't really a big Japanese community, but one of the things that really helped me with kind of figuring out that part of my identity was attending Japanese school every Saturday. So just imagine Monday through Friday was the American school experience, and Saturday was a full day of just Japanese school, like
so
math,
6 days a week.
Yes, math, science, like the whole nine yards.
Wow.
I think initially as a kid, I didn't really appreciate going to Japanese school because it's a weekend, right? Like all my friends are watching cartoons, Pokemon, whatever it is. I'm missing that to go to school.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I went was because my mother was a teacher there, so I didn't have a choice.
Okay.
She was just like, "You're going, and that's that. That's
Okay.
fine." And so attending the Japanese school initially was, but then again, looking back at it now, I'm in Japan, I'm in Tokyo, and I can speak it so well.
Yeah.
And so shout out to my mom. I love you, Mom. Nice to go. And then here I am.
So you went to Saturday school from what age until?
Yeah. So age was, I think it was around like 4 or 5 until maybe around 18, 19-ish.
Okay.
So quite a long time.
So just before college time in the US.
Just before college in the US.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Insane. I know.
Did you have to take exams and things like that as well?
Yes. Kanji tests every week. Math tests, again, social studies tests. And then once you hit high school, the same thing, Shukan testo, kimatsu, like the midterms and
So all the things that they're like the kids in Japan do full time,
Yes.
you were doing part time once a week.
Yes, once a week. And the amount of homework we got from week to week was absolutely insane. So every time I'd get the homework, most of the kids I think would do it, a little bit throughout the week. But because I was so busy with American school, it'd always be Friday night at like 8 is when we'd start, and then I would be up until maybe 3 or 4 a.m. with my mom, and she was right next to me the entire time, and just doing it late night and just getting it done. So pretty crazy experience looking back on it. Yeah.
So that sounds really intense because for me growing up, I didn't go to Hoshuko. I didn't study any Japanese when I was younger. My mum spoke a little bit in the house and that was kind of it.
Yeah.
I think my parents, there's lots of reasons why, but they decided not to put me through that because I think they wanted me to do like other stuff as well. But I can imagine that if you're, being forced to learn Japanese and all your friends are not doing that, it might feel kind of like laborsome, and Japanese might feel a bit like a burden in your life. Did you feel like that at all?
I mean, I think when I was younger, you wrapped it up so nice. That's exactly how it felt. And at the time, the only thing that was getting me through Japanese school was this after-school soccer program. They would have a 3-hour soccer program for the kids, and that was the only thing getting me through school. So, like you said, I think growing up, it did feel laborsome and quite taxing for sure. Yeah.
But now you can speak Japanese and you can go out and feel confident, appreciate your mother's
Mom, I love you. Like, really, I do.
Into teaching. That's so interesting. But so obviously you had Hoshuko, so that was every Saturday growing up for basically your whole childhood. Did you ever come to Japan, like growing up as well?
Yeah, so my grandma at the time was living in Yamaguchi. So she had some local connections to the local schools and the preschools there. So every summer, American school had about 3 months, elementary and middle school and high school. Yeah. Of those 3 months, 2 months, I'd come to Yamaguchi every summer and go to school during those 2 months.
Wow.
So shout out to my grandma this time. Obachan daisuke desu. Like, it is like, mom was doing it, grandma was doing it. But yeah, Yamaguchi was the place for me.
So you would basically do 2 months of the year in Japan, in Yamaguchi, in school. Was that elementary school? Did you do chugakko as well?
I did yochien, shogakko, chugakko, and then I wanted to do koko, but obviously they have entrance exams, and I felt bad kind of not doing that, just going in there.
Right.
They're like, who's this dude? So up until chugakko is when I met
Do you
middle
feel
school.
like that gave you like quite an interesting insight into like actually what it was like living in Japan, because for me, as I mentioned, I didn't study Japanese growing up, but I actually did in total of my life, I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks in like a Japanese elementary school.
Yeah.
My mom and my grandma somehow like wangled me in for like a week, and I was just this like kid in the class coloring in because I couldn't read or write any Japanese. But then English class came and I was the star pupil, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But it was really interesting for me because that was the first time I ever saw how like Japanese kids like interacted, or even saw that there were people my age that were Japanese, because it sounds so silly, but like growing up, I didn't know that there like were kids back home that could speak Japanese or anything like that. But do you feel like that gave you a more like put context into why you were going to Hoshuko and things like that?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that Japanese school experience in Japan really did for me was kind of shed light onto the cultural aspects of what being Japanese was about.
Yeah.
I think for me, most importantly, I did that through maybe the topics that kids would talk about in elementary school, like the latest TV shows or latest movies. And as a kid, right, like that's the one thing you're connected to. What TV show you're watching. And I was watching the Immersion, I was watching the Doraemon every Friday. I was watching the Kyoto show. Like those were my staples growing up. And to be able to kind of discuss that and talk about that with the kids at school really put the cultural framework of what being Japanese was about. So definitely helped me immensely.
That's
for
really
sure.
nice. Yeah. My I think one of my like most fond memories from when I did that was like the school meal, the kyushoku.
Yes. Oh my gosh, fire.
It was so good.
So
it was
good.
so well organized. And all the kids put on the apron. It was like this girl shift to do this. And then I didn't know that kids could be so adult at that time. I think I was like, what, 8 or 9 years old?
True, yes.
And then also when we cleaned the classroom as well, and everyone had their own like butai.
Yeah.
And then it was like we'd all sort of split off and do our own thing and come back, and that was really, really fun. I remember. And the akashiro boshi, the hats that we would put on to play tag.
Yep.
I always kind of wish we had that in the UK. It would make it so much easier to split teams. And
Or the uwabaki. I was thinking of uwabaki as well. How
Yeah.
you change shoes, like your outside shoes go in the box outside, and you change your inside shoes, like small things like that.
Yeah, that was. I really remember quite enjoying that.
Such a good time. Oh my God.
Very similar experience. Then at least you were able to communicate with them. I was doing like gestures and
I mean that's even more impressive, honestly. That's amazing.
Thank you very much. So then you went to school, obviously, like when you'd come to Japan, and maybe obviously I'm assuming spend time with your family as well. But then growing up, I think you started to become, when you're a kid, like I think everyone's a kid, you don't really think about looking different or sounding different or having different experiences. But then there must have come a point, I feel like, when you were coming to Japan and maybe you felt a bit disconnected to Japan, or sometimes even spending that much intense time in Japan, going back to the States, feeling a bit disconnected from your friends. Did you ever sort of feel like you started to feel like, I guess, this experience of dilemma between these two versions of yourself?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, again, with the whole going to Japan every summer did for me in terms of creating my identity is kind of create this Japanese versus American version of myself. So I think in terms of the version differences, I think when I was in Japan, my Japanese mode was really, straight to the point, but also, being open and kind of sharing my experiences in the United States because, kids in Yamaguchi, some don't even know where the United States is because we're kids, but beyond that, they haven't really experienced anything outside of Yamaguchi before. So I kind of took it upon myself to kind of share with them what that experience was like living abroad. And then when I went to the United States, it was a bit more of the opposite. Still open, but I would kind of, share about my Japanese experiences, but share less because, kids in Michigan, they don't really know or understand Japan or Japanese culture, but they didn't really also care about it as much as Japanese kids in Yamaguchi did. So I think that was when I definitely had those two sides coming up for sure.
Did you ever feel like there was anything that would sort of come up with regards to like appearance? Because for me, I grew up in a very like white area, and so it was only when I turned like 15 or 16 I started to really realize like, I actually look a bit different from these kids as well, which then started to make me think like, like that, I guess, cause a bit of an identity crisis in terms of like, I feel like I look different, and also my house is running in a different way, and I'm also going to this strange faraway country sometimes in my summer holidays, and my mum speaks a language that other people don't as well. What am I supposed to do with this toolkit?
I think when I was in Japan especially, I had a little sister, so luckily it wasn't just me going through it. My little sister and I. And I don't mean this to be rude at all, but it just felt like we were in a zoo because, we'd speak Japanese. And it'd just be like oh, konnichiwa. But then people would look at us like, we were in a zoo and we're just like, wait, how can you speak it? And they wouldn't, and some people wouldn't even say anything, but they would just give us the looks.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt uncomfortable with that, even though I could speak the language quite fluently.
Yeah.
And so I think with that, I kind of understood, okay, something about me is definitely different. And of course my looks, but also perhaps in their eyes, if you don't look Japanese, they don't really understand how you can speak it relatively well. So I think that was definitely part of the identity crisis at the time.
Well, I'm sure this is probably all played into how you've decided to then structure now moving here and your career,
For sure.
which is something I'd love to explore further on later in our episode. So obviously from traveling before, Iain has now decided to set up his career living here in Tokyo. So we'd like to explore that in the next episode.